Thomas Bradley wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand, leaving a streak of dust across his temple. The late afternoon sun poured through the high windows of Lincoln Elementary's auditorium, creating golden rectangles on the polished wooden floor. He was 3 hours into what should have been a simple job, replacing the outdated sound system before tomorrow's 5th grade ceremony. But nothing was ever simple when you were working alone. At 42, Thomas had long accepted his lot in life. Audio technician by trade, widower by circumstance, father to 9-year-old Lily by blessing. His wife Jessica had died 4 years ago from complications during what should have been routine surgery. One day she was complaining about back pain. 3 weeks later, Thomas was signing papers to donate her organs and trying to explain to a 5-year-old why mommy wasn't coming home. The grief had carved out a hollow space in his chest that never quite filled. He went through the motions, work, parenting, existing, but he'd forgotten what it felt like to truly live. He was kneeling on the stage, testing cable connections, when he heard it. A sound so soft he almost missed it beneath the hum of the building's ventilation system. A hiccup, maybe, or a stifled sob. Thomas paused, his hands stilling on the equipment. There it was again, the unmistakable sound of a child crying while trying desperately not to be heard. He stood slowly, his knees protesting after hours of kneeling. "Hello?" he called out. "Is someone there?" The crying stopped immediately, replaced by a tense silence that somehow felt louder. Thomas walked toward the heavy velvet curtains that separated the stage from the backstage area. He pushed through them carefully, giving whoever was back there time to compose themselves or run if they wanted to. What he found made him stop in his tracks. A girl sat in a wheelchair near the costume rack, her small frame hunched over as if trying to make herself invisible. She couldn't have been more than 10 or 11, with dark brown skin and tight curls pulled into 2 puff balls on either side of her head. Someone had dressed her with obvious care. A beautiful purple dress with lace trim, white tights, and shoes that looked brand new. A graduation cap sat askew on her head, its tassel hanging limply over one eye. But it was her face that broke Thomas's heart. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and her brown eyes held a depth of sadness that no child should know. "Hey there," Thomas said gently, keeping his distance. "Are you okay?" The girl's head snapped up, her eyes widening with something between fear and embarrassment. She quickly wiped at her face with the back of her hand, smearing tears across her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice small and hoarse. "I didn't mean to be in the way. I'll go back outside. I needed a minute." "You're not in the way," Thomas assured her, taking a cautious step closer. "Are you part of tomorrow's graduation?" She nodded, not meeting his eyes. "5th grade. That's exciting. Big accomplishment." He waited, but she didn't respond. "I'm Thomas. I'm just here fixing the sound system so everyone can hear the ceremony tomorrow." "I'm Kennedy," she whispered. Then, as if she felt she owed him an explanation, she added, "Kennedy Morrison." Thomas noticed the program clutched in her lap, wrinkled from being held too tightly. One section was circled multiple times in purple marker. Parent recognition ceremony. All students will be called to stand with their parent or guardian. Understanding dawned, heavy and painful. "Kennedy," Thomas said softly, pulling a folding chair closer and sitting down so they were at eye level. "Can I ask what's wrong? Maybe I can help." For a long moment he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, like a dam breaking, the words poured out. "Tomorrow, during the ceremony, everyone's supposed to stand up with their parents. They're going to call our names one by one, and we're supposed to walk up, or in my case, we'll up with our mom or dad or whoever." Her voice cracked. "But I don't have anyone. What about your parents? Where are they?" Kennedy's hands twisted the program, creating new creases. "My mom died when I was 6. Cancer. My dad, he left right after. Said he couldn't handle having a sick wife and a disabled kid. That's what my aunt told me before she passed away last year." Thomas felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. You've been through so much. I live with Mrs. Patterson now. She runs a group home for kids nobody else wants. Kennedy said it matter-of-factly, but Thomas could hear the pain underneath. She's nice, but she has 8 other kids. She dropped me off this afternoon for the rehearsal, but she can't come tomorrow. She said she has to take Marcus to a doctor's appointment and Emma has a court hearing, and she can't be in 3 places at once. Isn't there anyone else? A family member? A friend? Kennedy shook her head. My aunt was my mom's only sister. She had a stroke last year. I was with her when it happened. Her voice went flat, the way voices do when describing trauma. I tried to call 911, but my chair couldn't get to the phone fast enough. By the time I finally reached it, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Kennedy, I'm so sorry. I've been in this chair since I was 7, she continued, as if she hadn't heard him. Car accident. Some guy ran a red light. My mom wasn't hurt badly, but I was in the back seat. The doctors said it was a miracle I survived it all, but my spinal cord was damaged. T12 level, they called it. I can move my arms and everything above my waist, but my legs don't work anymore. She looked up at him then, and Thomas saw something that shattered him. Not self-pity, but resignation. The look of someone who'd learned not to hope for too much. Everyone else has someone, Kennedy said. Even Jackson, whose dad is deployed overseas. His grandmother is coming. Even Zoe, whose parents are divorced and both have new families. They're both going to be there, but I'll be the only one sitting there alone while everyone watches. The girl nobody wanted. Thomas found himself moving without thinking, kneeling beside her wheelchair. Kennedy, you are not. Please, she interrupted, and the word came out like a sob. Her hands shot out and grabbed his arm with surprising strength. Please, can you do something for me? What do you need? Kennedy took a shuddering breath, and when she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Could you be my dad? Just for tomorrow. Thomas froze. The question hung in the air between them, impossible and heartbreaking. I know it's crazy, Kennedy rushed on, tears flowing freely now. I know you don't know me. You're just here to fix the speakers. But you have kind eyes. You remind me of how my mom used to describe my dad before he left, before everything went wrong. And I can't be the only one without anyone. I can't. Her grip on his arm tightened. I won't ask for anything else. You don't have to take pictures or stay for the whole thing. Just when they call my name, could you please stand next to me? So everyone doesn't look at me with pity? So just for one moment, I can feel like I matter to someone. Thomas felt tears burning in his own eyes. This child, this brave, broken, beautiful child, was begging a stranger to pretend to care about her for a few minutes because she'd learned that actual caring was too much to hope for. He thought of Jessica, who had volunteered at children's hospitals throughout their marriage, who had always said that the world was full of people who could make a difference but chose not to, who had made him promise in those final lucid moments before the anesthesia took her and she never woke up, that he would teach Lily to be someone who showed up when people needed her. What kind of man would he be if he walked away from this moment? Kennedy, he said, his voice rough with emotion, you don't have to beg. I would be honored to stand with you tomorrow. She stared at him as if she couldn't possibly have heard correctly. Really? You mean it? I mean it. Not just during the ceremony, but all of it. Rehearsal, pictures, the whole thing. Whatever you need. But why? Kennedy's voice cracked. You don't even know me. Thomas thought about how to answer. How did you explain that sometimes life presents you with a moment where you can choose kindness or convenience, and that the choice defines who you are? Because somebody should show up for you, he said simply. And I'd like it to be me. Kennedy made a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and then she was reaching for him, her arms wrapping around his neck as she cried into his shoulder. Thomas held her carefully, feeling her small body shake with the force of her tears, Tears of relief, of gratitude, of grief for all the times no one had shown up before. "Thank you," she sobbed. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." "Hey," Thomas said softly, patting her back. "It's going to be okay. I promise." When Kennedy finally pulled back, wiping her face with her hands, Thomas noticed that her expression had changed. The resignation was gone, replaced by something fragile but real, hope. The next morning, Thomas arrived at Lincoln Elementary an hour before the rehearsal was scheduled to begin. He'd spent the previous evening explaining the situation to Lily, who had listened with wide eyes before declaring that Kennedy was basically her sister now, and insisting on coming along. "Dad, she needs people," Lily had said with the simple logic of a 9-year-old. "We can be her people." Now, as they walked into the auditorium, Thomas spotted Kennedy near the front. She was talking with another girl, animated, smiling, seemingly fine. But when she saw Thomas, her entire face transformed. Pure joy replaced the polite mask she'd been wearing. "You came," she breathed, wheeling herself toward them quickly. "I was afraid you'd change your mind." "I told you I'd be here," Thomas said. "Kennedy, this is my daughter, Lily." Lily stepped forward, not shy at all. "Hi, Dad told me about you. I think it's really cool that you're graduating 5th grade. I'm in 4th grade, so you're older than me, which means you're basically obligated to teach me stuff. That's how being an older sister works." Kennedy blinked. "Sister?" "Obviously," Lily said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Dad's going to be your dad tomorrow, which makes me your sister. Unless you don't want to be, which would be okay. But I was hoping you would because I've always wanted a sister and my mom died before she could give me one, so this works out perfectly." Thomas saw Kennedy's eyes fill with tears, but she was smiling. "I've always wanted a sister too." "Perfect," Lily declared. "Oh, I brought you something." She dug into her backpack and pulled out a small stuffed elephant, worn from years of love. "This is Peanuts. He helped me when I was sad after my mom died. I thought maybe he could help you too." Kennedy took the elephant with trembling hands. "Lily, I can't take your special toy." "You're not taking him. I'm sharing him." "Big difference." Lily grinned. "Besides, sisters share everything. That's the rule." Before Kennedy could respond, a woman approached them. She was probably in her late 50s, with tired eyes but a kind smile. "Kennedy, sweetie, who's this?" "Mrs. Patterson." Kennedy's voice was bright, almost defiant. "This is Thomas Bradley. He's going to be my person for the ceremony tomorrow." Mrs. Patterson looked confused. "Your person?" "I'll be standing with Kennedy during the parent recognition portion," Thomas explained. "We met yesterday, and I offered to be here for her." Understanding dawned on Mrs. Patterson's face, followed by relief. "Oh, thank goodness. I've been so worried about that. Kennedy's been anxious about tomorrow for weeks." She turned to Kennedy. "Sweetheart, that's wonderful." The rehearsal began, and Thomas watched Kennedy go through the motions with the other students. During the practice run of the parent recognition ceremony, when they called Kennedy's name, Thomas stood and walked to her side. The other parents noticed. He could feel their curious glances, but he didn't care. What mattered was the way Kennedy's face lit up, the way she sat a little straighter, the way, for those few minutes, she looked like every other kid who had someone in their corner. Afterward, the principal, Mr. Chun, pulled Thomas aside. "Mr. Bradley," he said carefully, "I appreciate what you're doing for Kennedy. She's a remarkable girl who's been through more than most adults face in a lifetime. But I have to ask, what's your relationship to her? For our records." Thomas hesitated. "Honestly, I met her yesterday. She was crying backstage and we got to talking. When she told me she'd have no one here tomorrow, I couldn't stand the thought of her going through that alone." Mr. Chun studied him for a long moment. "You know, in 20 years of education, I've seen a lot of things, but I've never seen someone show up for a child they barely know. Are you sure about this?" More sure than I've been about anything in a long time, Thomas replied. The principal nodded slowly. Well then, I think what you're doing is extraordinary. Kennedy deserves to have someone in her corner. The morning of the graduation, Thomas woke up nervous. What if Kennedy had changed her mind? What if he was overstepping? What if... His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Mrs. Patterson. Kennedy asked me to tell you she's wearing the purple dress and she can't stop smiling. Thank you for doing this. The ceremony was scheduled for 10 o'clock. Thomas arrived at 9:30 with Lily, both of them dressed up. Thomas wore a suit. Not expensive but clean and pressed. Lily had insisted on wearing her favorite yellow sundress because Kennedy needs to see we're taking this seriously. They found Kennedy backstage, surrounded by other students but somehow still apart. When she saw them, her whole face transformed. "You're really here," she whispered. "Did you think I wouldn't be?" "I don't know. I've never had anyone show up before. Not since Mom died." Thomas knelt beside her wheelchair. "Well, get used to it, because today you've got people." The auditorium filled quickly with families. Parents, grandparents, siblings, all dressed up and carrying cameras. Thomas felt the weight of what he was doing settle over him. This wasn't just about a ceremony. This was about showing a child that she mattered. The ceremony began with speeches and musical performances. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for, the parent recognition ceremony. At this time, the principal announced, "We invite all our graduates to stand with their parent or guardian. This is a moment to honor the adults who have supported these children throughout their elementary school journey." The auditorium filled with movement as parents stood and joined their children. Thomas caught Kennedy's eye and saw the fear there, the old familiar fear of being left alone. He stood up immediately and walked to her side. "Kennedy Morrison," the principal called. Thomas placed his hand gently on the back of Kennedy's wheelchair as she wheeled herself forward to the designated spot. He didn't push. Kennedy was fiercely independent about her mobility. But his hand stayed there, a silent statement of presence and support. As they took their place, Thomas became aware of the auditorium going quiet. People were staring. He heard whispers. "Who's that? I've never seen him before. Is that her father?" Let them wonder, Thomas thought. Let them talk. What mattered was Kennedy. And Kennedy was standing tall, well, sitting tall, with her head high and a real smile on her face. Not the polite mask from yesterday, but genuine happiness. The ceremony continued with each student-parent pair being recognized. When it was Kennedy's turn for a photo, Thomas stood proudly beside her wheelchair. The photographer hesitated, then said, "This is beautiful. Say cheese." They smiled. The flash went off, and Thomas knew that whatever happened next, Kennedy would have this moment. Proof that someone had shown up for her. After the ceremony, families milled around taking pictures and celebrating. Thomas stayed close to Kennedy, Lily chattering away about how amazing Kennedy's speech had been when she'd received her Academic Excellence Award. "You didn't tell me you were getting an award," Thomas said. Kennedy ducked her head shyly. "It didn't seem important." "Are you kidding? That's huge." A woman approached them, one of the other parents Thomas had noticed during the ceremony. "Excuse me," she said. "I'm Rebecca Chun, Principal Chen's wife. I just wanted to say what you did today was beautiful. My husband told me the story." "Thank you," Thomas said, feeling awkward with the attention. "Kennedy," Rebecca continued, "your mother would be so proud of you. I knew her, we volunteered together at the hospital. She talked about you constantly. How smart you were. How brave." Kennedy's eyes filled with tears. "You knew my mom?" "I did. She was wonderful. And she'd be so happy to see you have someone here for you today." Rebecca smiled at Thomas. It takes a special person to show up for a child who isn't theirs. As Rebecca walked away, Kennedy was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked up at Thomas with an intensity that made his breath catch. "Can I ask you something?" she said softly. Of course. What you said yesterday about being here for all of it, not just the ceremony. Did you mean it? Thomas knelt beside her wheelchair again, a position that was becoming familiar. I meant every word. Then, Kennedy took a shaky breath. Would you want to keep being my dad? Not just for today, but for real. The question hung in the air, enormous and impossible and somehow perfect. Thomas felt Lily grab his hand, squeezing tight. When he looked at his daughter, she was nodding enthusiastically. Kennedy, Thomas said carefully, are you asking what I think you're asking? I know it's crazy, Kennedy said quickly, the words tumbling out. I know you barely know me, but you're the first person who's shown up for me since my aunt died. You're the first person who's made me feel like I matter in so long. And Lily already said I could be her sister, and I've always wanted a sister and… Kennedy, Thomas interrupted gently. Take a breath. She did, her chest heaving with emotion. You're right that I barely know you, Thomas continued. But here's what I do know. You're smart, brave, and kind. You've survived things that would break most adults. You deserve to have a family who shows up for you. Not just today, but every day. So, is that a yes? Thomas thought about Jessica, about the promise he'd made to teach Lily to be someone who helps. He thought about the hollow space in his chest that had been there since his wife died. He thought about how, for the first time in 4 years, he'd felt something other than grief. He'd felt purpose. It's a yes to exploring the possibility, he said carefully. Adoption is complicated, Kennedy. There are legal processes, home studies, lots of requirements. But if you're serious about this, then I'm serious about trying. Kennedy launched herself out of her wheelchair and into his arms so suddenly that Thomas nearly toppled over. She was sobbing again, but these were happy tears. Thank you, she said between sobs. Thank you for seeing me, for not walking away. Thomas held her tightly, feeling Lily join the hug from the other side. And in that moment, surrounded by the noise of the celebrating families, Thomas realized something profound. He'd come here to fix a sound system. Instead, he'd found the missing piece of his family. The adoption process was even more complicated than Thomas had anticipated. There were background checks, home studies, interviews, and mountains of paperwork. But through it all, Kennedy remained hopeful. Mrs. Patterson was supportive but cautious. Mr. Bradley, she said during their first official meeting, Kennedy has been disappointed so many times. I need to know you're serious about this. I've never been more serious about anything, Thomas replied. They established a visitation schedule. Thomas and Lily would come to the group home 3 times a week for dinner and homework time. On weekends, Kennedy would visit their house, gradually getting used to the space and the routine. The first dinner at the group home was chaotic. 8 other kids, all with their own stories and needs, crowded around the table. But Kennedy seemed to glow, proud to introduce her family to everyone. One of the younger boys, maybe 6 years old, asked, "Are you Kennedy's real dad?" Thomas paused, choosing his words carefully. "I'm going to be her dad in every way that matters. Sometimes families are made by biology, and sometimes they're made by choice. Kennedy and I chose each other." The boy seemed satisfied with this answer. The home visits were equally important. Kennedy's first time at Thomas's house, she was quiet, taking everything in. It was a modest 2-story home in a decent neighborhood. Not fancy, but comfortable. The downstairs bathroom is already accessible, Thomas explained. My mom lived with us after Jessica died, and she had mobility issues. I'll need to make some modifications upstairs, but we can work on that. Kennedy wheeled through the space slowly, her hands trailing along the walls as if testing whether this could really be real. When she reached the room Thomas had prepared for her, painted purple at Lily's insistence, with a specially lowered desk and accessible closet, she stopped. "This is for me," she whispered. "If you want it," Thomas said. "We can change anything you don't like." Kennedy didn't respond. She just wheeled into the room, to the window that overlooked the backyard, and started crying quietly. Lily appeared at Thomas's elbow. "Is she okay?" "I think she's just overwhelmed, honey. This is a big change." Lily walked into the room and climbed onto Kennedy's lap without asking permission, wrapping her arms around her new sister. "It's okay to be scared. I was scared when Mom died. But Dad's really good at making things okay. And now you have me too. So you're basically unstoppable." Kennedy laughed through her tears, hugging Lily back. "I think I'm going to like being your sister. Obviously. I'm awesome." The weeks turned into months. Kennedy's social worker, a kind woman named Patricia, conducted the required home visits and interviews. Each time, Thomas held his breath, afraid something would disqualify them. "Mr. Bradley," Patricia finally said during her last visit, "I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've seen a lot of families, some good, some bad, some just adequate. But what you've built here with Kennedy and Lily is special. The way they interact, the way Kennedy has blossomed, the way your whole family has embraced her. This is what adoption should look like. So we're approved?" Patricia smiled. "Pending final court approval, yes. Congratulations." The courthouse was intimidating, all marble floors and echoing hallways. Kennedy was nervous, her hands gripping the armrests of her wheelchair so tightly her knuckles were white. "What if the judge says no?" she whispered to Thomas. "Then we'll appeal and try again," he said firmly. "But Kennedy, look at me. This judge is going to see what everyone else sees. A brave, brilliant girl who deserves a family, and a family that's already fallen in love with her." The judge, Ana Rodriguez, was a stern-looking woman in her 60s. She reviewed the file in silence while Thomas, Kennedy, Lily, and their lawyer waited. Finally, she looked up. "Mr. Bradley," she said, "tell me about the day you met Kennedy." Thomas recounted the story, the crying behind the curtain, Kennedy's request, his decision to show up. As he spoke, he saw the judge's expression soften slightly. "And Miss Kennedy," the judge turned to her, "why do you want Mr. Bradley to adopt you?" Kennedy straightened in her wheelchair. "Because he sees me, Your Honor. Not my chair, not my disabilities, not the sad story of how I ended up in foster care. He sees me, and he showed up when nobody else did. He's taught me that I'm worth showing up for." She paused, gathering courage. "I know I come with complications. I need physical therapy and doctor appointments and special equipment. I know I'm not the easy choice, but Mr. Bradley and Lily, they don't see me as complicated. They just see me as family." The judge was quiet for a long moment. Then she signed the papers. "Adoption granted. Kennedy Morrison is now legally Kennedy Morrison Bradley. Congratulations to your family." The courtroom erupted in applause. Mrs. Patterson was there, crying happy tears. Patricia, the social worker, was grinning. Lily was jumping up and down, shouting, "She's officially my sister." But the best moment was when Kennedy looked at Thomas and whispered, "Dad, yeah, sweetheart, thank you for not walking away." Thomas pulled her into a hug, not caring that they were in a courtroom, not caring that people were watching. "Thank you for asking me to stay." Kennedy is 14 now, thriving in 8th grade. She's at the top of her class in science and mathematics, with aspirations of becoming a biomedical engineer. The wheelchair is still part of her life, but it doesn't define her anymore. She's learned to advocate for accessibility, speaking at school board meetings about the need for ramps and elevators. She started a peer support group for other students with disabilities. She's even begun competing in wheelchair basketball, surprising everyone, including herself, with her natural athleticism. Lily, now 12, is fiercely protective of her sister and has become an advocate in her own right. The two of them are inseparable, despite the normal sisterly squabbles about borrowed clothes and bathroom time. Thomas still works as an audio technician, but he's cut back his hours to be more present for his daughters. He coaches Kennedy's wheelchair basketball team and never misses Lily's volleyball games. Last week, Kennedy gave a speech at Lincoln Elementary's graduation, now as a guest speaker, not a graduate. She stood before the fifth graders, sat in her wheelchair, but you know what I mean, and told them about the power of showing up. 3 years ago, she said, I sat backstage at my own graduation, convinced I was alone in the world. I begged a stranger to pretend to be my dad for a few hours, because I thought that was the best I could hope for. She paused, looking at Thomas in the audience. But that stranger didn't just show up for a few hours. He showed up forever. And he taught me something important. Family isn't about biology. It's about choice. It's about showing up, even when it's inconvenient. Especially when it's inconvenient. The auditorium was silent, every parent and student hanging on her words. So here's my challenge to you, Kennedy continued. Look around. See the people who need someone to show up. Be brave enough to ask for help when you need it, and brave enough to give help when you can. Because you never know. That one moment of kindness might change everything. After the speech, a mother approached Thomas. My daughter has cerebral palsy, she said quietly. We've been considering foster care, but I was afraid we couldn't handle a child with special needs on top of her. Your story gave me courage. We're starting the process next week. This happened often now. Their story had spread, inspiring other families to open their hearts to children with disabilities. Children who'd been waiting for someone to choose them. Thomas still remembers that day in the auditorium, hearing Kennedy cry behind the curtain. He thinks about how close he came to ignoring it, to finishing his work and going home without ever knowing she existed. Sometimes the most important moments in life come disguised as ordinary ones. A routine work day, a child's quiet tears, a simple question, could you be my dad? Kennedy's question changed 2 lives, hers and Thomas's. But really, it changed 3 lives. Because Lily gained more than a sister. She gained proof that her family could grow beyond loss, that love doesn't divide when you share it, it multiplies. Now, when people ask Thomas about the adoption, he tells them the truth. I didn't save Kennedy. We saved each other. She gave me a reason to feel something other than grief. She taught Lily about compassion. She reminded me that life isn't over when you lose someone you love. Sometimes it's just beginning again in a different way. And Kennedy, when people ask her about being adopted, she smiles and says, I used to think I was unlucky, but now I know I was just waiting for the right family. The one that would see me in a backstage corner, crying alone, and decide that I was worth showing up for. She always adds, everyone deserves someone who shows up. Sometimes you just have to be brave enough to ask. And sometimes you have to be brave enough to say yes. Their story isn't unique. There are thousands of children in foster care right now, waiting for someone to choose them. Children with disabilities, children with trauma, children who've learned not to hope for too much because disappointment hurts less when you expect it. But every story like Kennedy and Thomas's proves something important. Love doesn't require perfection. It requires presence. It requires the willingness to show up, to stay, to choose family even when it's complicated. 3 years ago, Thomas Bradley was just a man fixing a sound system. Kennedy Morrison was just a girl crying behind a curtain. Today, they're proof that sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones that form in the most unexpected moments. All it took was 6 words, could you be my dad? And one answer, yes. If this story touched you, remember, there are children waiting right now for someone to choose them. Maybe that someone is you.